What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're going to jump in and talk about Edge of Fate. More than anything, actually, we're going to speak about the lack of Edge of Fate info, which is a funny one because actually there were a lot of videos posted about Edge of Fate with a little bit of preview content for the expansion itself, but the focus largely ended up being on the system changes that are coming to Destiny 2. Although one of the problems with the way Bungie revealed that information is that a lot of the detail actually came from content creators who were reiterating what Bungie had told them at a capture event and spreading that information out across multiple different videos, which there's been a lot of mixed feedback about in the community as well, as it's frustrating in terms of actually compiling info, getting decisive answers about changes that are coming up, and also means that players of the game have to spend a lot of time kind of siphoning through content creator videos, which is a less than ideal way to try and discover information about system changes in particular. So I wanted to speak about it in this video. It's something that's been on my mind a little bit, and I kind of wondered whether it was just me, but especially in the last week, there have been a lot of Reddit threads like this. Bungie needs to start turning up the hype train for Edge of Fate because the energy is just not there. Another one here as well, talking about the Final Shape preview cycle. An alleged game said the community team before Final Shape had a cadence of a Wednesday blog post followed by a Thursday twid that rehashed that blog but provided some context or minor details to the Wednesday blog. That worked really well, and it gave us a lot of clarity coming into the Final Shape on how the game was changing systematically, and how new additions like Prismatic and exotic class items would affect the sandbox. But after those system changes were revealed, and I remember this, closer to launch, Bungie started to allow creators to release preview content where we got to see more of the Final Shape itself, but that kind of followed all of the breakdown of the technical system changes that Bungie had given in a written format, and then subsequently followed up with Q&As and clarification on how things would actually work. The funny thing is that this time around, Bungie have left that job to content creators, and I've even seen arguments, from different parts of the community about whether certain changes have been explained correctly, and silly things like rumors about potential changes to Bungie's plans when it comes to things like the seasonal artifact bonuses that we're going to get in the Year of Prophecy. And on top of what people are saying on Reddit, the lack of hype for Edge of Fate itself, it also highlights that issue where players have had to kind of hunt for information, which hasn't been necessarily presented in the best way. I'm not digging at any content creators, by the way, because there's a lot of stuff going on in Edge of Fate, or around the core game, should we say. And I think most content creators have done a relatively good job of breaking that stuff down, but I do strongly believe that the format is less than ideal, and it would have been far better for Bungie to actually break these system changes down themselves, give us the technical details, let us know the implications of all of the changes, things like the power refresh. It seems to me absolutely wild that Bungie have hardly touched on any of these things, but have instead allowed content creators to disperse that info, which again has been done in a way which isn't necessarily player friendly in terms of actually acquiring all of the details. Now, I think the way that Bungie have approached this may indeed be connected to the reasons that we're not getting a lot of marketing for the Edge of Fate, and I can only assume that part of that is because the marketing budget is far lower than what we've seen for previous expansions. That would figure, given that Bungie clearly have lower budgets for nearly everything in the studio right now, and I would imagine that Bungie kind of saw inviting content creators as a good way to get these details out and potentially generate some hype without them having to spend massive amounts of money on things like Vidocs, trailers, and potentially even a kind of cohesive communications team to put all of this information down on paper. So I'm sure there's a technical reason that Edge of Fate has been revealed the way it has, but the other thing that strikes me is that at a time where Bungie want to claw back players, get people interested and hyped for the game again, firstly we have a very short marketing cycle, so it's not a long period of time to actually build interest in the new release. And then secondary to that, we have very limited materials which Bungie are actually using to do it. So personally, right now, I'd be really excited to see, what are the activities that we're going to be playing on Kepler? What will the end game for the Edge of Fate expansion itself actually be like? Because all we've really seen is some gameplay of opening missions on Kepler, which is fine in terms of getting a bit of a look at the destination, but again doesn't generate a lot of intrigue in terms of what is it that we'll actually be doing on Kepler that'll help to keep players engaged. Again, I'd really like to know what the activities and endgame on Kepler will be about. Even basic things about the destination are missing at the moment. Back when we had the Pale Heart, Bungie were pretty open when they said this will not be a match-made public destination. When it comes to Kepler, we have no idea if it's going to be a traditional Destiny destination, or whether it will be something more similar to the Pale Heart. From the gameplay we've seen, obviously, there are going to be secrets and bits of progression on Kepler, and Bungie just haven't done anything to sort of promote that in an exciting way, and that's leaving players feel like this expansion is not going to be that insane. ultimately, right? Because when Bungie have something really cool that they're excited about and they think is kind of a selling point of a particular expansion, take the exotic class items from the final shape, for instance, those elements end up being really front and center. And I guess as well, these kinds of expansion reveals typically try to push the unique components of the destination or the core bits of gameplay that actually feature into the expansion as unique selling points. So that'd be my first piece of feedback, I guess, on the whole reveal for Edge of Fate. Either Edge of Fate is a pretty small expansion, and that's why Bungie are not sort of shouting about it a ton, because they ultimately just don't feel as excited as they should to actually speak about it. The other possibility is that they're simply hiding a bunch of stuff that we will ultimately actually get to do in the expansion. Whichever one of those is true, it's just failing to capture players' interest at this point in time. The other element, like I said, is that Bungie spent a lot of time speaking about system changes, the loot, tiering systems, Armor 3.0 and all of that kind of stuff, the power refresh. Bungie have put that front and center, but they've done it in a kind of third-party way where content creators are the main source for that information. Which firstly just kind of frazzles people's brains because it doesn't provide a lot of context, right? Typically it would be, here's the cool new stuff, this is what you should be excited about, and then here are the system changes that are going to support actually reinvigorating the game in an interesting way. So it's been a really weird setup in terms of how Bungie actually announced things, which further indicates this kind of scramble behind the scenes to suddenly get all of the information available and figure out a good way to present it. Of course, between now and when Edge of Fate does drop, I'm personally confident that there will actually be more marketing for the expansion, one way or another. It would be wild if that doesn't happen, as Bungie are really underselling the main selling points of this content at a time where they really need to try and be pulling players back in. And it may actually be partially responsible for some of the negative feedback and sentiment and general vibes around what's coming out in July, which I think is just a shame and a missed opportunity potentially. So those are my pieces of feedback on this kind of release and marketing format that Bungie seem to be approaching for Edge of Fate. Hopefully we'll continue to get bigger, juicier twits. That'll be helpful in terms of providing information. Bungie do have their dedicated dev streams as well, so we need to recognize they have plotted important kind of reveal points for this expansion. It just feels a bit all over the place and quite late in terms of a reveal as well. The other element of that is that there are a lot of people who will plan things in their lives around video games like Destiny, and we didn't even get the release date for Edge of Fate until May, which was basically 2 months before it actually comes out. And given that this is in the middle of summer, that's also a really busy time in people's lives. So I just hope Bungie can clean up the communication for the next big content drops that they have, whether it's later on in Year of Prophecy or things that we see in 2026. So for now, give us your thoughts, whether it's about Bungie's approach to the reveal, Edge of Fate itself and what we've actually seen, or the system changes. As always, I'd love to get your thoughts. Personally, whatever happens at the minute, I'm just looking forward to something new to do in Destiny. I know I've said a few things that may come across as very critical around Edge of Fate, but unfortunately, when sentiment in the community is the way it is right now, there isn't an awful lot of choice, right? I'm still one of those people that's gonna play the thing, and I'm hoping that it will be really enjoyable and engaging when it comes to it. I certainly don't say these things to be hateful. I say them because I want Destiny to have the best opportunity to continue to succeed moving forward. So that's my 2 cents. Give us your thoughts below. If you've enjoyed the video or found it interesting, a rating would help us out as well. But otherwise, cheers for watching. I'll keep you posted when we do get further info. And otherwise, I hope you guys have an awesome day.